Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Week 2 of testimony in the trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs wrapping up today with witnesses, including the general manager of a luxury Beverly Hills hotel on the stand. The jury also hearing from rapper Kid Cudi today. He testified about a break-in at his house, at one point comparing Combs to a Marvel supervillain. The rapper, whose real name is Scott Mescudi, also testifying about his car being set on fire, allegedly after Combs found out he was dating Cassie Ventura. Now, prosecutors allege Combs firebombed Mescudi's car, an allegation they could try to weave into the racketeering conspiracy count involving arson. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Also today, Diddy's former assistant, who was granted immunity, testifying about what he claims he saw happen on a private plane and an apple-throwing incident that he called the last straw working for Diddy. Coming up, Kid Cudi's message for fans after his big day in court. Plus, it's one of the most searched topics tonight, what people want to know about Kid Cudi's dog. I want to get right to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky, who has been in the courtroom every day of this trial. Aaron, let's get right into Kid Cudi appearing in court. Paint the picture for us. How did he walk in?
Unlike any other witness that we have seen so far, he's in a leather jacket, white t-shirt, jeans, and smoking a cigarette as he's entering court. And then he takes his position comfortably in the witness box, surveys the room. The jury is interested in this figure because he's a Grammy-winning rapper, and introduced himself as Scott Mescudi. And when asked, are you better known as any other name? And he said, Kid Cudi. And right from the start, you knew this was a unique witness. And he talked about 2 instances in particular where he said that Sean Combs broke into his house, and he told the jury about his suspicions that later Sean Combs arranged the firebombing of his car.
Okay, Aaron, give us his vibe. What was he like on the stand? How did the jury react to all of this?
He was pretty casual. If he didn't understand something, he'd look at the lawyer and just go, huh? Or what? And at one point he let out a big yawn when he's talking about things that, you know, have been talked about in the entertainment world for more than a decade. This car fire that Kid Cudi endured in 2012. But it's significant now, Eva, as federal prosecutors try to convince the jury that Sean Combs used arson as part of the criminal enterprise that he was running.
There was a whole scuttlebutt about if he could talk about what happened to his dog. What was that all about?
Oh, so he accuses Sean Combs of breaking into his house after he finds out that he's dating Cassie Ventura. And he says when he got to the house, he found some Christmas gifts open, unwrapped, that he had bought for his family, and his dog locked up in the bathroom. And he said it made the dog kind of permanently jittery and very much on edge. I think federal prosecutors had wanted to know a little bit about the dog and how the dog responded to the house being broken into. And the judge at one point, because the defense objected, was confused, saying, like, you're going to talk about the trauma inflicted on the dog. And the judge said, well, I know this is a very important topic. He laughed a little bit. And unfortunately, the prosecutor said the dog is no longer with us. But Kid Cudi's clearly a dog lover. He said that he found out from his dog's babysitter, the words he used, that his car was on fire. One early morning phone call that he received from this woman to say that his porch had been torched.
Cassie Ventura's former makeup artist was also on the stand today. What did she say?
Mila Morales said she first met Cassie Ventura, Eva, when she was about 16 years old. She had made her up for various events over the years, but she recalled Grammy Award weekend in 2010. She said they had been out, Prince was having a party, they were out for dinner, they finally get back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila Morales falls asleep, but she says Cassie Ventura comes in a moment later, and almost immediately followed by Sean Combs. And Sean Combs demands, where the F is she? Cassie Ventura had gone into the bedroom. Sean Combs followed her in there. Mila Morales says she heard screaming and a commotion. Sean Combs storms out of the hotel suite. And when Mila Morales next sees Cassie Ventura, she has a black eye, knots on her head. She took her home and had a doctor friend come and examine her to see if she had a concussion. The doctor apparently recommended that Cassie Ventura go to the ER, but Morales said she didn't want to go.
We also heard from the general manager of an upscale Beverly Hills hotel on the stand today. He talked about hotel logs. Why?
This was from L'Hermitage in Beverly Hills, and Sean Combs had stayed there a bunch over the years, according to the reservation log. And with each guest that was a repeat visitor, there was what was called a profile log established. And under the heading for Sean Combs, it said that housekeepers had noticed that there was always candle wax all over the place and that he used a lot of oil. And the jury had already heard candle wax, baby oil, those were things for the freak-offs.
Aaron Katersky for us there at the courthouse. Thank you so much, Aaron. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer was also in court today. You were here to break this all down for us. Okay, so it was a big day in court. What stood out to you?
So we all showed up for Kid Cudi. We knew he was going to testify, but I did not expect this quote from Kid Cudi. It came in the context of there was some back and forth between him and Sean Combs. He wasn't responding to him in terms of whether or not he was dating Cassie. His car gets Molotov cocktailed. He shows up at the Soho house to try to kind of squash the beef, so to speak, with Combs. And he says this is what Combs is doing. He's standing there staring out the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. It got a couple laughs in the court, but also painted this very menacing and very awkward kind of encounter between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi in relation to who's dating Cassie.
We also have to talk about this alleged car bombing situation. What did Kid Cudi say happened here?
So a number of things, right? A little bit of context. Prior to this alleged arson, there is an alleged burglary that Kid Cudi says Sean Combs is participating in. Someone calls him by the name of Miss Clark saying, Combs is in your home. He calls Combs. He's like, where are you? I'm here. I'm going to come see you, whatever it may be. And a few days later, this happens. The cut of the top of his Porsche and a Molotov cocktail inside. We saw some charring on the inside of that vehicle. And we've heard this from Cassie's civil lawsuit and this case when she testified before, that this was meant to be a threat, according to her, of Sean Combs towards Kid Cudi.
And we should say that we heard Kid Cudi on the stand say when they talked about this, Combs denied having anything to do with this apparent situation. Okay, so on the cross, the defense seemed to really push Kid Cudi on his relationship with Cassie. What was that all about?
So the sense that I got was that she's playing into this relationship with Kid Cudi and Sean Combs. That Sean Combs, as we heard, was on a break with Cassie, and then they started dating, Kid Cudi and her. And what the defense was getting at was, well, she lied to you. She played you, that they weren't really on again, off again, but in fact, they were still dating, and you didn't know this. And the entire time you were dating, Sean Combs never interrupted this relationship, never got involved. He didn't know he was in the scene at all. And I think what they're trying to get at is Cassie was free to leave. She was free to have her own relationship, and Sean Combs wasn't intersecting with that. And also this idea that she was manipulative in some way, shape, or form, saying the words that, well, Cassie played not only you, but also Sean Combs, and Kid Cudi agreed.
We also have to talk about the former assistant who got the immunity from yesterday. He was back on the stand this morning. Did he say anything to you that made sense for the immunity deal here?
No. And this is one of the reasons why I woke up so early and showed up, because in my mind, I practice in the Southern District of New York. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you going to give this person immunity for? Meaning that they cannot be prosecuted based on what they say. That is so great that you're waiting for them. And it wasn't really much. 3 different interactions of assault, 2 between Cassie, 1 between Gina, and the fact that he bought some drugs, not as much as I thought it'd be.
Okay, so we've got this long weekend that's happening. Court's not in session tomorrow. It's not in session on Monday. How do you think that impacts both sides of this case?
It's all about what the jury's going to be left with, thinking about in the last few words they've heard. They heard about the wax and the baby oil, the strawberry and the chocolates, the abuse allegations from the Grammy of 2010. And of course, the last thing they heard is about an HSI investigator talking about extracting information from 3 of Cassie's laptops. Those are going to be the last things in their mind over the next 4 days because they're off tomorrow as well.
Yeah, back in court on Tuesday. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. Well, now that testimony is wrapped ahead of the long weekend, we want to look back at a notable moment this week. Yesterday, a forensic psychologist took the stand as an expert witness for the prosecution, telling the jury in general about why some people stay in abusive relationships. Joining me now is Dr. Erin Nelson. She is not involved in the case against Sean Combs, but she knows what it's like to be a forensic psychologist on a high-profile criminal case. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. Let's just start right there. Why do people stay?
You know, one of the things that is really important when you're talking to a jury or a case is that the lay public, the general public, obviously always has the why doesn't someone just walk away? And something that's really important to understand from a victimology standpoint is the sense of omnipotence that even in everyday relationships, somebody who has power and control over someone can exert. It's about the perception of the. And in this case, I'm certain that the forensic psychologist would have been looking at both the victimology and the offender's behavior to try to explain that to the jury.
So often in these types of circumstances, and even with this case, we've seen the comments online, people saying, well, she could have just left. What do you say to that?
I say that regardless of how high profile the matter is, such as this one, or to the millions of women that are suffering from intimate partner violence at home, that is the fundamental misunderstanding that is important to explain, especially in a criminal case to the jury, is that when somebody is in a domestic violence or an intimate partner or coercive control situation, that concept that lots of people think about, it's why don't they just walk out the door? Why don't they just take their things and go? That the psychology of it can be so overwhelming and so powerful for a victim in that stance that it feels impossible, and perception rules the day.
Dr. Erin Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. And we should say, if you are experiencing domestic violence, help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7. That number is 800-799-7233. Still ahead, breaking down the legal strategies at play on both sides with rapper Kid Cudi in court today. Could evidence pose an issue for the defense? And the rivalry that's defined hip hop for a generation, how it's tied to this Diddy trial. Welcome back. Multiple witnesses took the stand today, including a big name in hip hop who we've been talking about, Kid Cudi. Let's break down the key legal strategies that we saw. We have Brian Buckmeyer playing the defense, Bernarda Villalona playing prosecutor. Let's get right into this. The police report, Bernarda. A break-in to Kid Cudi's home in 2011. Does this actually matter?
It does matter in the sense of not really the break-in, but the arson part of it. But the break-in just leads you to believe, like, Jesus, how demented is Sean Combs? And I think that is what the prosecution was trying to drill to this jury, to show how his jealousy, his anger, his rage, and his being possessive over Cassie, like how far he's willing to go. And I think that's exactly what was the strategy of the prosecution, in addition to, of course, what was important, the arson part, in order to meet that racketeering conspiracy part, because breaking and entering is not part of it.
Brian, did they prove that it was him?
I think they got very close. I think there's actually a bit of a mistake by the defense. And what I mean by that is during the direct examination of Kid Cudi, it got to a point where they led us all the way to the edge. It was like, oh, maybe Sean Combs did or maybe he didn't. But when Kid Cudi talked about arranging a meeting at the Soho House with Sean Combs and was asked why he did it, he came out and said, well, because I thought that Sean Combs was a part of this. Now, they objected to that and it's sustained. They should not contemplate that in the end of the case. But as we say as attorneys,
you can't unring the bell.
Can't unring the bell.
Jury heard it.
So I think it's going to be difficult for the defense there.
Okay, the jury also saw photos of Kid Cudi's car. What was the prosecution trying to do there with the pictures?
Well, they're corroborating that there was an arson that took place. So aside from Kid Cudi's word that his car was blown up by a Molotov cocktail, you also want to show the photographs because the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So by showing it, the jury got real insight as to look how serious it was. So it corroborates the testimony.
Do you think the evidence is a problem for the defense?
I think they're going to try to steer away from it. They're going to say, okay, an arson happened. We're not sure. Maybe Collins did it or did not do it. They're going to say, this is what a jealous boyfriend does. This is not what a sex trafficker does. I think they try to reposition themselves as to who doesn't have an ex who has tried to burn up some of their clothes or their cars.
But the car?
Yeah,
blow up the car?
Yeah, it's what crazy exes do.
Blow up cars?
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want that crazy.
I think that's the only argument they have here, because they can't really go away from it wasn't Sean Combs, because so many of the breadcrumbs in the circumstantial evidence does point to him.
Yeah, and also you have, remember the email that Cassie has sent to her mother talking about the threat that Sean Combs made about causing harm to Kid Cudi. So I think it's strong there that it was Sean Combs that was responsible, or someone working with Sean Combs. And again, conspiracies are part of the indictment, so you got it there.
It was interesting to see the picture anyway, because we all heard about that and hadn't seen the pictures of it yet.
Exactly.
Cassie's former makeup artist also testified. She said she saw alleged abuse, and that's You know, what's interesting about that is we've now heard multiple people say they saw this alleged domestic violence.
And multiple incidents, more importantly. We're not talking about the same incident. We're talking about now several incidents throughout these years that they were together.
Does that matter in all of this?
Yes, because remember what the prosecution is saying is that this violence is tied in the sense of the coercion and the control that Sean Combs had over Cassie. So that way Cassie wasn't really able to consent, be a willing participant in these sexual acts and these freak-offs. So it's all tied into it. So it's not just domestic violence. When you tie in the domestic violence with what Dr. Hughes testified to yesterday, and you put that all together, then you have a more clearer picture that there's no way that Cassie at all times was able to consent to these freak-offs.
I think it's a little bit difficult, though, for the government in this sense, though, because I think they might lose the forest from the trees in the sense of if this was always a domestic abuse relationship, which they have said it is, and they have all these incidences of domestic abuse, where are we separating from when it's just simple abuse that doesn't lead to a freak-off and abuse that does lead into a freak-off? Because we have all these incidences of abuse, but not always leading to I'm doing this so you participate in a freak-off.
But all you need is one. All you need is one when you're talking about sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution. All I need is one freak off that was where she wasn't a willing participant, where she didn't consent to in order to make out the charges.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Coming up, who is Kid Cudi and what some might find surprising about his high-profile appearance today, plus why the rapper's dog is one of the most searched topics tonight related to the Diddy trial. Welcome back. There's a lot of buzz surrounding today's big witness in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Grammy-winning rapper Kid Cudi, who briefly dated Cassie Ventura, who has this message tonight after taking the stand.
People have been hitting me up the past week, just checking in, and even today, this is a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me.
Joining me tonight, ABC News contributor and DJ Megan Wright. Megan, thanks so much for being with us. For people who don't know, who is Kid Cudi?
Kid Cudi is a real, I would say, hip hop gem. Okay, he is a Grammy Award-winning artist, producer. He's also an actor. He broke out into the scene in 2008 with his hit single Day and Night. But here's the thing, like, we don't really see much of Kid Cudi outside of when he's promoting his art. We really don't. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not in a bunch of paparazzi pictures. He really keeps to himself, but he has a very strong and very loyal fan base, which is why him showing up, at this trial, even just him getting out of the car, fans seeing him, in his jeans and in his leather jacket, smoking a cigarette like we see here, like, that was very surreal for fans because, again, you're kind of getting an inside look, of this guy that you don't really get to see so much, talking about something that not just in the hip hop community, but also fans have kind of heard rumors about. But I don't ever think there came a point where we thought, okay, we're actually going to hear or read, a transcript of what Cudi is talking about relating to his car blowing up. And then we hear, or his car being set on fire. And then we hear, the play-by-play of everything that happened with Cassie. And then we hear, about his dog, and then going to, see Diddy and him standing like a Marvel supervillain. Like, I don't think people expected that, especially from a guy who is usually very, very private. It was definitely surreal.
Yeah, getting to see those pictures today was really interesting. Suge Knight's name has been mentioned a few times in this trial already. Can you just give us a little bit of history here and how it's tied to this like long-standing East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry?
Sure. Yeah, the East Coast versus the West Coast, hip hop rivalry is one of the most talked about rivalries of all time. And of course, you have the beef that came from that, which is, Big versus Pac and also their respective labels. Okay, so you have Big, who was signed to Bad Boy, which was helmed by Sean Combs, who at the time went by Puff Daddy, who now, of course, we refer to him as Diddy. Then you have Tupac, who was on Death Row, which was under Suge Knight. And so if I can get the story as quick as possible, it kind of goes, these two guys, Pac and Big, started off as friends, but things kind of changed in 1994 when Pac was shot outside of Quad Studios. He blamed Big and Puff, who both said they didn't have anything to do with it. But then, things kind of, led and went, forward with this back and forth. This records were put out. And although you can't say that, this beef led to their murders, Pac was murdered in September of 96. Big was murdered in, March of 97. And it thought this stayed in the 90s. It didn't, as you can tell with what happened in the trial.
Yeah, we're hearing about it again. Megan Wright, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Sure. Well, there's no cameras in court during the Sean Combs trial, but that is not stopping people from going online, trying to keep up with all the latest updates from the courtroom. And that's where our daily segment Searched comes in, where we break down some of the top search trends about this case. Some of today's biggest searches: Molotov cocktails, Kid Cudi's dog, how much Diddy paid Cassie, and when will this trial end? Joining me now, from Los Angeles, is our ABC News contributor, Kelly Carter. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Okay, let's start with the Molotov cocktails. That's a term that came up during Kid Cudi's testimony.
Yeah, people want to know what that is because we've heard about the alleged incident with the car. Of course, Sean has denied any allegations of arson, but Kid Cudi and also Cassie have alleged that this happened. Wanted to see what that looked like, and finally people got a chance to see those photos. So they want to know what it is. And obviously it's a very illegal, dangerous, handmade bomb.
We also have to talk about Kid Cudi's dog because that also came up today and people have questions. So what is there to know?
Yeah, I mean, well, the dog is no longer with us, first off. But he said his dog was very distressed because the dog, after, again, an alleged break-in, was placed inside of a bathroom and locked inside of a bathroom, and the dog was extremely jittery in the aftermath of that experience. And no one wants to hear that about a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone loves a dog, right?
Yeah.
Now, also, it's interesting because it's been a couple days since Cassie Ventura took the stand. Her testimony, though, continues to really generate interest. Here's one of the searches that's trending. How much did Diddy pay Cassie?
Yeah, it's interesting how that keeps coming up, right? Because, again, her testimony was last week. And in her testimony, she revealed that she was paid $20 million from the 2023 civil suit that she filed, and that was settled inside of 24 hours. And I think people probably keep coming back to that as new information comes out in the trial because they're, again, trying to connect all the dots here. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that there is out there to connect.
Kelly Carter, thank you, as always, for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu, weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap, The Case Against Diddy, hosted by our very own Brian Buckmeyer on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good rest of your day.